Good evening and welcome to the coffee table. So yesterday we were talking about design thinking with one of the foremost authorities on design thinking in the world, Shahid Khan, who works with SAP. He's the head of digital transformation for them. Today we're going to talk about another subject that most of us have been talking about in one way or the other. We tweet about it, we talk about it, and that is fake news. Yes, news can be fake too, right? And there is an increasing incidence of fake news simply because people have more access to information, and anybody with a phone today is actually a broadcaster and a publisher also. So Meher, let me start with you. So fake news.
It reminded me of Trump.
And
how he has
what do you
ruined,
mean? I mean,
how he has ruined the world.
How has he ruined the world? By saying fake news, fake
because
news?
everything that is said about him, he says it's fake news. So that kind of takes away
the
importance of the word fake news
Right.
and how it's affecting the way we look at the world today. It reminded me of this WhatsApp group I'm on. It's just my siblings and some first cousins. And so what we do is whenever there's somebody posts a link of some outrageous news or even if it's not outrageous, something, we question. We don't really say, okay, let's just accept it as a fact.
Forwarded as received.
We don't. Seriously, we get into, there's my brother, who is a diplomat, then there's another cousin, he's in the police, there are housewives, there are a couple of young people, one is a teenager, the other one is almost 30 years old, and all of us get into a discussion, and we have made it a point not to forward news to anyone without verification.
So we know that there is a lot of information that flows around.
It's a very big issue.
So our guest today is actually a young man, Dawar, and I met Dawar on Twitter, right, just a couple of days back, and we started to have a conversation. And it came on to talking about, fake news, talking about, how news and rumors float around, how they travel at the speed of light. So Dawar, welcome to the coffee table.
Thank you very much, and a pleasure to be here. And
pleasure is all ours. And now we're going to ask you.
Yeah.
Right.
My first comment here, I would agree with Meher. I have a family group on my WhatsApp as well. Everyone does.
Yeah.
And my aunties and moms tend to forward you these totkas, what we call, and a lot of information that is basically contrary to science.
Right.
So sometimes
anecdotal.
So we have to intervene, and we also have to show that we are not disrespecting our elders as well. So that is what we all basically feel. And fake news affects you at every part of your day.
Yeah.
You start with Twitter, you open your Twitter every day, there's something fake there. Obviously, people like us tend to be skeptical about it, but majority doesn't. And that is what led us to what we came up with, which is called Surkhi.
Yeah.
So
Surkhi is from headlines.
Surkhi is from headlines.
It's a very interesting name.
Yeah.
So we came up with Surkhi because I personally was inspired with the All India Muslim Gazette, which Sir Syed Ahmed Khan launched.
Right.
And that was
the 1870s, isn't
That is the 1870s. And that was, at that point, we came up with the first Urdu newspaper. So Urdu news became popular then we came up with the name Surkhi, and headline as such became all this jumbled up knowledge. And we think that fake news is relatively new, but when we go back into archives of Urdu news...
I'll tell you why I would disagree with that.
Yeah.
Mark Twain, right? Mark Twain was a journalist, he was a writer, and he was the first one to say all news, right? You need to know that it's not necessarily going to be true.
Exactly.
Who said that famous line, lie goes around
yeah,
the world, something.
Somebody said it.
Who said that?
Now it goes around even faster. It's made it twice around the world before the truth gets its shoes on. The truth is actually very lazy.
So what would make somebody like you to think that this is an important thing?
So I was for my master's in Hungary a year and a half ago.
Right.
And the prime minister over there is...
Budapest.
Budapest.
Beautiful country.
Beautiful city, beautiful country, but the political party, the leadership, is somewhat what we label far right.
Yeah.
And
it's far right now.
Yeah, it's far right. It's since
Amazing, isn't it?
Since 2012, it's far right and extremely far right. Viktor Orban, the prime minister, is currently known as the spearhead of far right in Europe. He inspired the movement in Austria.
Far right
and
or
Italy.
populist?
And in France.
Populist.
Populist, huh?
But so that particular person, we realized that Hungarians over there are suffering from all the propaganda that he comes up with. He came up with the idea of Christian democracy to keep out migrants and all of that. So we thought, why doesn't Hungary?
I mean, I've always tried to understand what is this concept of Christian Democrat?
Yeah. So
that will be a very long.
That will be a very long discussion.
So because you're a student of political science, aren't you?
I was. That will be very long.
We'll invite you again.
Okay, all right.
To talk about democracy someday.
So what happened? I realized that Hungary itself has a very, very vibrant intellectual culture.
Yeah.
But they haven't been able to counter this at all.
Right.
Because 90% of their media is now controlled by the state or through allies of the state.
Right.
So what we came up with, inspiration from there, and obviously when we came back, inspiration over here as well, that WhatsApp, all these social media tools, all these apps coming out, how do you counter all of that?
Right.
So Surkhi isn't just the fact checking, but under Surkhi, we came up with Surkhi meter.
Right.
Which basically
labels.
I
saw that. That's really interesting.
So
starts with Khara Sach and goes to Jhoot Ka Mukala.
Jhoot Ka Mukala. So an example of that.
Khara Sach is not the name of a TV show.
No.
Let's make that very clear. We're not commenting on a TV show here.
So a recent example of that, this whole news of 18 bank accounts that belong to
the state bank.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of people messaged us, is this true or not? Is this true or not?
Yeah.
And then immediately we realized that State Bank has already issued a statement that this is not true. Yeah. So we labeled it Jhoot Ka Mukala and just put it out there. So the idea behind that, fact checking is somewhat
out there. You know what I do when I go around the city, because I don't drive, so I have somebody drive me. And if I see a car with a odd number plate, I'd always take a picture and I post it with hashtag #FitIn.
So this is where we come up with.
What you just said, what happens is that if I hear something has happened in the US, I'll Google, and if the news is true, I'll find that news on CNN or BBC or Guardian or ABC, okay, not ABC, sorry, the CNBC or even Fox. And now what happens in Pakistan is it's not like that at all. At the moment, whenever there's breaking news, it starts with Twitter. It's now everybody knows that the first place where you look for the latest news is Twitter, not television, not an online portal. So what happens is this news, for instance, you know, this about 18 bank accounts, or for instance, Pakistan and Israel and Pakistan's a plane landed here or something. So what happens is
about to
instead of verification, I don't know how a news channel, any big news channel or any big media house, I don't know what their process of verification is, but what they do is all of them post that fake news on their online thing right away. So anybody who's checking that news will think, okay, can I take, I'm not pointing names,
go ahead.
If Dawn is saying it, News is saying it, Nation is saying it, Daily Times is saying it, Express is saying it, of course it'll be true. They don't understand that the news came from just one source.
One single origin.
And then when like in the story you just told us, when the State Bank gave a statement, nobody will pay attention to that. So my biggest concern is it's not even about saying something that is not true. I'm concerned about how Pakistan is being looked at, because anybody who needs information about Pakistan, just an observer or somebody who's covering Pakistan or somebody who wants to write on Pakistan.
You suddenly went ISPR on us.
No. Oh, no.
You're not Cynthia, are you?
No.
She's not Cynthia.
It matters to me. My son is studying in the US, is studying in New York. To people around him, to his class fellows, he'll be 19 tomorrow. No, he's 19 today. Oh my God. This is January 26th. Happy birthday, beta. So he is representative of Pakistan to them. It's not that he keeps talking about Pakistan, but now they see Pakistan through him. They say, okay, this is what Pakistan is, and they like the Pakistan that they see in him. Similarly, it's not a being of, I'm not even talking about patriotism. I'm not talking about not criticizing Pakistan, because I criticize Pakistan like I would criticize my own family. I will criticize.
Okay, we can see and say, okay, whenever there's a problem.
My point is completely different when it's a completely fabricated piece of news and it's negative.
So we have an
People pick it
example of
up.
that.
Please give us, you
from
must have
the-
experienced it.
All of this in fact checking comes from a lot of research as well. We went back to what is happening around the world, and Rand Corporation, which is a very big think tank, they came up how this fake news generation happens. And their theory, their hypothesis was that, and later BuzzFeed News also used this, they reported that the news itself doesn't matter. What you're saying, it doesn't matter. The quantity of that matters. If it's coming from multiple sources, people will believe it. So quantity is the key to generating fake news, and Twitter is responsible for a lot of that. Relentlessly, Twitter,
you keep
Facebook,
building a particular narrative.
it happens,
And we see that happening. Let me field something else. So there is Cass Sunstein, right, who teaches at Harvard, and I came across a book that he wrote a few years ago called On Rumors. He said, basically fake news takes hold, or rumors take hold, because a particular segment of people actually want to believe that. Right? So we already have a belief system. So if I'm aligned with a political party, right, I'm going to believe everything that you tell me about the opponent.
So this is what we call confirmation bias.
But
in
what if they are
psychology as
making
well.
the news?
That's another part.
That's another part. So we recently had a Wall Street Journal journalist basically leading a campaign against a mosque in a particular area, and then other Washington Post, all of them called him out that as a journalist, you cannot become an activist in any sort of movement.
All right, here is another one.
Journalists
I do
and
not
activists.
believe, I believe that ethical journalism is actually an oxymoron, right? Honestly. And there is no such thing as an unbiased journalist. There is no such thing as a balanced piece of news, because the truth has multiple facets. You can look at it from multiple angles. Your truth may not be my truth. Right? I may look at it in a totally different
That
way.
is just a way of saying that you can get away with anything.
Yeah, you can, because I can. Look
That
at the discussion.
that is the difference between opinion writing and
no, I'm talking about news. I'm not even talking about opinion.
When if I'm talking about this room, I cannot say that there were 6 people sitting on this table. I have to say there were 3. I can make up a story about your opinion or his opinion.
I can say the 3 people sitting over there, right, were actually being controlled by 3 people in the background, right? They had IPs in their ears.
Now he's giving me a lesson on deductive logic.
So I can say anything.
The issue here is that how do you get ahead of human biases?
Yes.
And that is the next step that we're trying to achieve right now. So we have been doing a lot of this through research and background checks. But what we are doing right now is designing a machine learning model, and that has sort of created a 75% accuracy at this point. So we are in the process of going data scraping through thousands of articles. Our aim is...
You're training it.
We're training it.
How does it work? Please explain.
No, we're going to do that after this break, because we're going to take a break. We'll come back.
That will take a lot of
talk
time.
about the kind of technology that's available today, where you can actually sift through the news and you can know accurately, to a high degree of accuracy, what's fake and what's not. So take a break, come back to us, stay with us after the break, and we will be picking up this discussion. Welcome back. We've got fresh cups of coffee, and we're going to go back and talk about fake news. And you were talking about the bias.
So a confirmation bias is what we noticed in all of our research, that people believe what they want to believe. So, and reporting also has some sort of bias. So we were trying to neutralize all of this. How do you neutralize or get ahead of this? And the simple answer was, why not train a machine to do this? Take out the aspect of human bias completely. The completeness of that is next to impossible. I would say that. I wouldn't claim anything drastic that we've achieved, but we've achieved 75% accuracy when we give it the model a news.
Right.
It comes up with some 75%. And again, the ranges are
what
similar.
It's doing is it's going out, is kind of
sifting through news, checking the bias of sources. If, for example, Dawn has a particular bias, ARY has a particular bias, they also assign values according to that. So the idea over here
I
is
want
that...
to talk about one particular group that keeps getting called out for its fake news.
Yeah,
right?
and
the largest media group.
It employs a lot of journalists
a lot of
have a very strong bias.
And they come back and say, oh, I had it from my sources. Right? My sources told me that. There was a big story recently.
And just as I said, the contradiction doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you give a half-hearted apology, if the damage has been done. If That is my point. That is what I was saying. It's got nothing to do with how you look at your country, what you feel for your country. It's just, it's your own integrity. I write, okay, I was an op-ed editor, and I used to make sure that everything that I edited was the, okay.
You're talking about print, Meher. You have time, you know. We are talking about electronic. We are talking about things happening, right? Every second, every
I agree,
few
but
seconds.
you see, what he's talking about is something that people may do by mistake,
yes.
or people may do unconsciously or without thinking about it.
No, I'm talking
what
about
we are talking
deliberate.
about, what's happening in Pakistan is a completely different ball game. Here, fake news is created to create a narrative, to push a narrative. It's not about saying, you know, so Muhammad Ali has died and Muhammad Ali has not died, and the news is, I think it was about Sylvester Stallone a few weeks ago. People said Sylvester Stallone has died. So that is something different. It's a rumor. Here, it's complete. It's
Constructed, engineered,
malicious.
fake news.
It's the intent. वो जो Islam का भी है ना, जो basic concept. Something I truly, really believe in. कि अमाल का दारोमदार नियतों पर है. इन्नमल अमालु
You need to
बिन्नियात.
translate that.
That's the only ayat, that it's the intention that matters. It's the intention behind the action that matters. Somebody, you give me a piece of news and it's not true. That is different. All of us make mistakes. All of us read fake news, false news, and it's the clickbait age. What I'm concerned about
Clickbaiting is something else.
How are we letting this happen? And the biggest dispenser, I don't know if that's the word, the biggest media houses, if they are doing it, who do we go to for the truth? Once upon a time, there were newspapers, there were media houses, there were websites that we could go to that, okay, you know, this one, despite the biases, will give you the truth.
So
now,
the Surkhi meter, right? So,
no, talk about the media house.
yeah, I'm going to relate the two, right? And saying, because the Surkhi meter is supposed to call it out and say, well, this is blatantly
This is
false.
the idea that if there's a certain section of the media that is planting it, then there has to be a certain outlet which is also telling the people that this is not right, and you have a particular service to make sure that you are on the right side or not.
I mean, I've seen a spokesman of the Punjab government, not Mr. Chauhan, but another spokesman, right? Dr. Gill.
Yes.
He's now taken to Twitter, he records short videos to contradict all these
Again, the issue with that is, along with the media tilts, we have this, the support of these political parties is also adding a lot to this mess.
The paid trolls,
the paid trolls, all of that.
But tell me something, Dawar. My own thesis is that trends, right?
Yeah.
Trends are basically Mexican waves. It takes 22 people in a stadium full of 10,000 people to create a Mexican wave. And it dies as quickly.
Not right.
So that's, that's what
Sometimes
trends
the damage is too great.
So every weekend, and Sunday is coming up again, and we all see this trend that is in support of certain violent extremists that we've seen. And it happens every Sunday for the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, but what effect is it?
In Pakistan.
It doesn't.
See,
In Pakistan.
I disagree.
Yeah.
Trends are Mexican waves that die as fast as they rise.
After the damage has been done.
No, what damage? It
what
dies.
it
Dies because nobody is there to keep it going, because people don't buy it.
So in Pakistan,
I'm not talking about
it's
Twitter trends.
No, we're talking about Twitter trends.
Pakistan, it's not that bad yet. It's not India where mob violence has actually happened.
Absolutely.
That's what I meant. I am talking about Twitter trends, but the harmful ones.
That is WhatsApp.
One thing
that is closed group.
WhatsApp.
Oh, by the way, they've just started this thing. I was reading about it that you can't forward it to more than 5 people. Yes.
So this is because it happened in India.
So no more selling T-shirts from WhatsApp.
Maybe, let's see. But I think one thing that personally also affected me is that we all remember the Mishal Khan incident.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh God.
Yeah. So that was an instance of fake news getting out of hand in Pakistan, and the young man being killed. And I actually...
But that was news within the campus.
Within the campus, but spread
but
over
it was
WhatsApp.
Still,
so it was scattered
and
over
it was
WhatsApp.
Facebook and WhatsApp.
WhatsApp and Facebook.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine actually knew his father.
But these are realities, Dawar. Facebook is the largest platform for dissemination of information now. Right? Over 2.4 billion people.
So that's what we're trying to do, that use
but
existing
you said that
distribution channels.
affected you.
So that affected me because I managed to go to Sawabi and visit his grave. So in 2017, before his first death anniversary, my friend knew his father, and she planned a visit to the grave itself.
Right.
And the grave is somewhat of a memorial now. A lot of people have come up and given charity, and they're maintaining it now. The government has assigned 2 policemen to guard the. But 2 policemen, if what happened with him, people want to do something, 2 policemen are nothing in there. So that is one example how we lost a young life through WhatsApp and Facebook.
To incorrect information. Biased information for a different purpose, for a different reason.
Yesterday there was news of the 2 COS meeting.
Yeah, the meeting with the Indian COS.
You see, when you talk about the ISPR, it just looks like as if we are trying to.
Yeah. So ISPR came up with a clarification.
If you are trying to, it's just, that is one of the biggest fake news I have read recently. That's the only reason why I would mention it. And since I do observe what's happening between Pakistan and India, so the DGISPR tweeted that the COS of Pakistan and India are not meeting, as had been reported by Hindustan Times, and that they had not served together in Congo. And the next thing, the last thing he said was the most positive bit, that it is up to the governments, it is not up to us. Yeah. That for once he said it very clearly.
Yeah, they've accepted civilian authority over foreign policy.
I am an optimist. I am a glass half full person. I want to believe that this pause means what it says. They want to stay away from our democracy.
The good thing right now is that our civil military leadership is on the same page. But we have
Don't
to
say
see.
That.
They are.
Even that is taken negatively.
Isn't this a very...
that depends on what they do now.
Yeah, but isn't this a very biblical reference? On the same page, on the same hymn sheet?
Yeah. I don't want to jinx it now.
Okay. So let's go back.
Again,
it's
double-edged.
All right, let's go back to fake news.
When you say they're on the same page, people will say, oh, see, Imran Khan has been brought forward by the
Let's come back. Let's come back to
I would say one thing, that when we came up with Surkhi meter, 2 months after that, the Ministry of Information also established its fact-check service to counter fake news. But what happened, and we pointed this out, is that when the Azam Swati incident happened, they issued a tweet that nothing like this is happening. So in a sense, Ministry of Information itself has created a fake news.
Whose news is fake news?
Exactly. So who do you trust? Do you trust the media houses or the government?
It was a false tweet.
Yes, because the Supreme Court report came out that all of this did happen, and the IG then refused to come back. So in a sense, the government also created fake news.
I have a very simple BS checker. Right? If it's been denied, it's not a lie till it's been denied.
Exactly. Right? So when the government is creating it, it also creates a friction with the public. Yeah. So with Surkhi meter, we are trying to cater to audiences on both sides. Like, take out the bias, have sources from this side, have sources from this side, and make sure that it's balanced and that everyone, in the end, starts believing it.
So we have a very young population. Huh? We have a very young population, and it's getting younger. Yeah. Right? So the impact of fake news is going to increase.
It will.
Right?
It will.
Because these are going to be people who may not necessarily understand or have the same depth of understanding, depth of knowledge. They're going to be dependent on these fast sources of information.
Exactly.
It drops into my Facebook account, into my WhatsApp. It comes from a source.
The low-income people, the blue-collar people, they believe everything.
They believe everything.
Because they get WhatsApp forwards too. They are on Facebook too. And the guy who works in my house, he keeps asking me, because I keep sharing videos with him and I keep showing him things and what's happening in Pakistan and everywhere, anywhere else in the world. And then he asked me, "Hoya baji, gal sachi hai?" And then I was like, "Nahi, ye nahi hua."
So from Faisal's point, that all of this is going to be absorbed by a certain audience, and that audience is youth. Youth is the most energetic. This is what also we did with Surkhi, and Surkhi meter is just one part of it.
Right.
Surkhi as a whole wants to introduce new media content that's specifically designed for the youth, and we went back to what does the youth like. We're going to create content. We're starting to roll out from April onwards, and what we learned is that the young mind will not keep focus more than 12 seconds.
Yep, we know that.
You have to hold their attention. The content you design has to gather their attention.
I think what
So
you're doing
we're
is
going to take a
wonderful,
break,
and
man.
you should go to schools and colleges and speak to children about this.
But we're going to take a break here, and we're going to come back after the break, and then we'll pick up the conversation right from this point on.
Do you remember that
you know
thread
what's going to happen? Yeah,
that I sent
remember
you?
that thread. So can we take a break?
Please don't.
Let's take a break. What we were talking about is, and saying, okay, here is this young population. They have more and more access to information. They have really very little way and means to determine what's true, what's not, what's fake, what's real. And you were talking now about the Surkhi meter, and it's not just a meter, right? You have the ability to at least scroll through the news and say, okay, fact check, do all those things. So what else?
So the idea is that all the content that we see, even new media initiatives in Pakistan, aren't targeted towards a young demographic, and they absorb the content.
So Mango Bars isn't?
Mango Bars is, but Mango Bars content isn't serious. Okay. Parlo has some content that is serious.
Things, but
Parlo does have serious, but the audience is, they are trying to entertain the audience. We have to get them focused on certain issues, and that's where Surkhi is very serious. So the idea is that content has to be absorbed within 12 seconds. And we try to create infographics, try to use visual design, try to have all the elements that we think that if someone sent this to us, would we like it or not? Then we try to have this before.
So that's basically packaging of information, right? But my question is, how do I know that what Surkhi is putting out is actually true?
So whatever we put out, we make sure that we mention sources at the corner of every content.
Okay.
So there isn't a content Surkhi put out. It is tagged.
I'm so glad.
It has sources on it. And sources aren't like this news channel, that news channel. If we're, for example, citing use of contraceptives in Pakistan, we'll bring in a WHO report and mention the page number there.
Well, that is doable, right? We're talking about stories which are constructed. Right?
So again,
like the polio campaign, right? The bias against, and the whole narrative that these polio drops are in some way designed to control population growth. Right? So, yeah, it is. There's a lot of people who actually believe that. Right? So, that kind of thing. So, what is it, when we look at news, right? What do we think? What do we say? Do we accept? Do we not accept? There's news of interest, there's news of relevance, there's news of representation, there's news of resonance. Right? So, these 3 R's are critical to the whole news process. Right? It's all content.
So what we're trying to do in order to have all of this noise cut down is try to focus on certain stories at one point. And what we do is you pick up a certain issue and turn it into a feature for the whole week.
Right.
So we're not going to just touch the tip of the iceberg. We're going to bring the entire iceberg.
Right? So long form stories.
When we go in depth, what happens is that people try sort of lose their interest. So that is why we bring in visual design to keep the interest.
Right.
And when we're keeping the interest, we put in both sides of the picture that you decide.
No such thing as balance and
I'm so seriously, I'm just so happy to listen to what he is saying. Truth matters to people.
Truth matters to people, but whose truth?
You cannot do this.
I
Truth
can,
is truth.
and I did, and I will, and I have.
Truth is truth. Not my truth or your truth. We're not talking about subjective truth here. We're not talking about 3 people looking at something in 3 different ways.
There are no absolute...
We're talking about calling a cup a cup.
Yeah, but there are... No, I can argue.
Okay, mug is a mug is a mug.
Okay, let me argue this one, right? So there is Robert Lanza, who says there is no such thing as a physical reality. It's all bio.
I'm going to ignore you for like the next
you can
5
ignore
seconds.
Me.
So all of this, and obviously the role of the private sector, what they can play, and how enough hasn't been done. And I would say that what we're trying to do using AI and data can help a lot.
I'm going to touch the AI thing. So I think it's Georgetown. I think it's Georgetown University.
You were going to talk about fake news.
And they are, I'm talking about fake news. They recently did an experiment. They took a clip of Barack Obama, right? And they used...
The deep fakes.
Absolutely, right? So you can actually...
So that's coming to Pakistan
That's coming to Pakistan. So you'll have a big name politician saying things that he has never said. And you'll see that. You'll see that on the news.
And the interesting thing is
how are we going to sift through that? Or is there no way of sifting
We will need to build machine learning tools that uncreates all of that. if it's being created using machine, we'll come up with a solution that declutters all
No,
of that.
for that, but yes, machines will
You know what we're talking about?
I am going to, yes, the Barack Obama thing, I didn't really...
What they did was they took a sample.
I understood.
They took a visual sample and an audio sample.
I understood what you said, Mera Damag, because I'm so concerned about the whole thing of lies and truth. And what I'm concerned, I think I would look at things as the person that I am. I'll just give you an example. If somebody tells me, if you are one of my closest friends, and he's also one of my closest friends, and he tells me that you said this thing about me, I'm going to be thinking about the person that you are, what our past friendship is, how you have behaved, how you have responded to certain things, and I'm not one of those people, he'll say, oh, but usne ye kaha, and I'm going to say, you so and so.
You're talking about gossip.
No, I'm not talking about, this is how I look at news. This is how my inner verification barometer comes into action, because I'm not the kind of a person who would want to believe that somebody is trying to do really bad things to somebody. I'm not saying bad things don't happen. But if you're saying that the Prime Minister has imposed, the new government has imposed such a huge liability on people, there are new taxes that are going to affect poor people, I will sit and think about it,
you know,
looking at whatever I know of Imran Khan, the politician, and Imran Khan, the Prime Minister. I would do this even if
that's the verification bias.
Even if I am a Asif Zardari or a Nawaz Sharif voter. So I'm not, it's not a matter of being a good person or a bad person. It's just that how can we do this to ourselves? How can we do this to our children? How can we live in a world in which there is no way of knowing?
One thing that the media industry is ignoring, and I'm very critical of that, is even if you have very good reporters, very good research, all of that, they're ignoring the factor of credibility.
Yes.
They're ignoring that to this generation, credibility is everything. So when you lose your credibility, even if it's just one fake news item and it gets called out, you've lost your credibility.
No,
they don't even apologize.
They don't apologize. They don't issue a clarification.
Let's look at the real thing. Right? You continue
so
to
many
be the highest
tweets.
watched channel. And I can tell you 10 dozen stories that were not true. Right?
So it doesn't put out fake news all the time. It's like they insert a fake news item once in a while. So that gets called out and they've lost their credibility.
But they don't apologize.
They don't apologize.
Lost their audience.
That Faisalabad thing, that thing with the laptop report and the Prime Minister's photograph. Now the government has issued a statement that the government has nothing to do with this project.
Yeah, but that's a different context.
No, but they all the media houses that tweeted, all the journalists who tweeted that news, that piece of news, they didn't delete the tweet. They didn't even say they were wrong.
Let me because we've just got about a minute and a half left. So I just want you to look at it from a political scientist point of view. Can you really have democracy in this environment? Right? Because one of the key things has to be people's access to information.
Yes.
If that information is tainted in the first place, right? If I have, I mean, there are accounts that billions have passed through, right? And you know something has gone wrong and something has happened. How do I answer that? How do I figure out what's real, what's not?
I would say that 8 hours a day we work, and the rest of the day is for us to consume information.
Yeah.
At every point in the day, we're consuming information. And this reminds me of what Jack Ma recently said, that my father worked 16 hours a day, but he was very busy.
Right.
I work 8 hours a day, but I'm very busy. My kids are going to work 3 hours a day, but they'll be very busy.
Very busy.
So the rest of the day, everyone's consuming information.
All right.
And that information will lead to your decision making, and decisions will decide democracy.
We're going to come to the end of the program right now. So what we're going to do is get you back in possibly next week, and we'll talk more.
Seriously,
right? Because
let's
it's such
do
a
that.
big, huge subject.
It is.
That we need to have more debate and discourse
Can
on
we?
it.
Then we can talk about specific issues.
Yeah. Thank you for staying with us while we talked about fake news. We're going to try to be real. We're not going to try and put out news as it was forwarded to us. Take care of yourself and have a nice weekend.